again address that tomorrow is Veterans Day, and let's give another round of applause to our veterans. The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the guns went silent, and this isn't really yet, but this is my recognition of Flanders Field, I guess, is the more of the flesh tone poppies than the red poppies. But at any rate, it is a very important day. Today we do want to remember. Today we want to recognize those that have served. Today also is the 244th birthday of the Marine Corps. And Gail and I have a fondness for the Marine Corps because our daughter Madeline is, as you all know, engaged to a Marine. And that was started in 1775 at Tun's Tavern, which is of all places that started. The Marine Corps started in a bar. Can you imagine that? So at any rate, that's a little bit of history that has nothing to do with the sermon today. Today, though, we are looking at Luke. We're in the 20th chapter, and we're looking at verses 27 to 38. And it is, in the NRSV, the headline is The Question About the Resurrection. And I'm sure you're all familiar with this. This is the only time in Luke's gospel that the Sadducees are the ones confronting Jesus. Usually it's been the Pharisees and the scribes that have been confronting him. But here the Sadducees come up and talk to Jesus. And let's just look at Luke 20, 27 to 38. Some Sadducees, those who say there is no resurrection, came to him and asked him a question. Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, leaving a wife and no children, the man shall marry a widow and raise up children for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first married and died childless. Then the second and the third married her. And so in the same way, all 7 died childless. Finally, the woman also died. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will the woman be? For the 7 had married her. Jesus said to them, those who belong to this age marry and are given in marriage. But those who are considered worthy of a place in that age and in the resurrection from the dead, neither marry nor are given in marriage. Indeed, they cannot die anymore because they are like angels and are children of God, being children of the resurrection. And the fact that the dead are raised, Moses himself showed in the story about the bush, where he speaks of the Lord as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Now he is God not of the dead, but of the living, for to him all of them are alive. Now the Sadducees were a small sect of Judaism, as we've talked before, and they're predominantly the priestly caste, though not by this time of Jesus' life, not all of them were priests, but they were of the priestly caste, and they were predominantly wealthy and powerful. They were in charge. The Sadducees would have been the ones that the Essenes really disliked. You remember the Essenes were out in the desert, and that's another Jewish sect, and they believed that the high priest, who was predominantly Sadducee typically, that they were a false high priest, and they had their own leader out in the desert. So the Sadducees were a little bit of a contentious group. They only believed or followed the first 5 books, the Pentateuch. They did not look at the prophets, the major or minor prophets, or the wisdom writings. They only looked at what they believed to be the writings of Moses. And therefore they had a very strict conservative look at Scripture, perhaps, though the Pharisees are the ones that are looked at as having all of the laws and all of the regulations. But the Sadducees, in many ways, and ironically, in many ways, they shared more in common with the Samaritans than they did with the Pharisees, because the Samaritans only looked at the first 5 books as well. But the Samaritans, of course, were put upon by all of the Jewish sects. So you have a great irony there about that. So the Sadducees are coming to him because they do not believe in the resurrection. In the first 5 books, there's nothing that would lean towards or to imply a general resurrection. So they did not believe in it. Now the Sadducees have all disappeared after the destruction of the temple in 70. The Sadducees didn't survive. And as I've told you before, after that we just have Pharisees. That's the Pharisaic movement is the only movement that survived the destruction of the temple. And that's because they had the synagogues out in the diaspora. That's another thing. So they don't believe in it, so they come up with this thought exercise. And I doubt that this is the first time that they have used this line of argument. Most likely it's been a very successful line of argument to perplex their Pharisee friends or the Essenes or anybody else. And I kind of doubt that the Sadducees talked to the Essenes a great deal. First of all, because the Essenes tend to be out in the desert, but they also had a great animosity to one another. But at any rate, so this argument has probably been used before to great effect, and they're going to spring it on Jesus. This has always worked. We're going to use it again, and it's going to get it. And 7 brothers. Now, why 7 brothers? What is that number 7 significant in some way? Lots of times numbers and names are significant in Scripture. It's not generally thought by scholars that the 7 is of any real significance here, other than being ludicrous. It's this absurdity of this situation. It could have just as well been 2 brothers, but because that happened where in early Judaism. Now, by Jesus' time, it's thought that this Levite marriage, this idea of marrying your brother to replace his, to give him an heir or lineage, pretty much had fallen from use, but it's still there in the Sadducees' mind. So it wouldn't have been unheard of at all to have had 2 brothers, maybe even 3, but to go to 7 is taking the exercise, the thought exercise, and that's one of the elements we use in trying to argue logic and philosophy, is to take something to the point of absurdity. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't work so well. Sometimes it's just absurd. But here, that's what they're trying to do. 7 brothers marrying the same woman, and when she dies, who is her husband? Because she's given them no children. Now, there's some that imply that this is actually no sons and not just children, because in that society, it is an extremely patriarchal society. If you don't have a husband or a son or a grandson, someone that's a male, either a husband or a descendant to care for you, you're in big trouble in this society, and you're reliant on the temple to take care of you, basically. So this is the idea that's going on here, that she has no sons. And then I'm going to come back to that a little bit. But Jesus then says that talking about that those in the resurrection aren't given in marriage. Now, we'd like to think, wouldn't we, that we have the same relationships in the hereafter. And we won't get into the theology of the hereafter, because you do have issues with heaven and the resurrection, the new heaven, the new earth. And that's going to take a lot longer, because I know you don't want to go eat baked potatoes after service. So we won't delve into that. But the hereafter, and whatever level we're in, we'd like to think that we have those same relationships, that we still recognize our loved ones, and we still have our same spouse and everything like that. But we have evidence here that we know that it's changed. And we know in Paul's writing that the resurrected body is not the same as what we have here. It's different in some way. We don't really know exactly how, and I don't know that it's important for us to know that exactly how. I do think, though, that we do recognize our loved ones, and I do think that we still have interaction and relationships with our loved ones in the hereafter. So don't get worried about that. But I think it's just so different that we can't begin to grasp it here. Too many times, to that end, too many times we hear stories about people that are getting close to their passing, and they have loved ones or friends or someone that they see, that they communicate with, that is very real to them. Now, some may say that's a delusion. Others can believe that it's an actual, it's an actual spiritual encounter. I'm of the mind that many times there's an actual spiritual connection there, that loved one is there, manifested in whatever form, to help to ease that person's passing and to prepare their spirit and their mind for their ultimate end here in this earthly world, and to move into what is the kingdom of God. Many times the argument here that why there's no marriage is because in heaven there is no need to procreate. And so therefore you don't need to be married. I have a little bit of an issue with that, because marriage is more than just procreation. If that wasn't so, then there would be no reason for older folks that have gone past their childbearing years to ever get married to a second or spouse or a later marriage. So I kind of reject that line of argument that it's all entirely focused on procreation. I think that there's something more there that I just don't know, and I have to be comfortable in not knowing, because there's a difference in the relationship. Jesus told me there's going to be a difference in the relationship. I believe him. Therefore, I'm good with that. But part of what he's getting at is, because this is such a patriarchal society, and I've listened to more feminist theologians and pastors railing against this control of this woman by these men, and that is somehow something we need to rail against. Well, in our time, yes. In their time, this idea of this Levite marriage is actually a safety net for this woman. Someone needs to take care of her, because if the husband dies and there's no son and there's no one to take her in, her family's already paid a dowry to have the husband take care of her. Her family probably isn't able to help take care of her, or is unwilling, perhaps. I've already taken care of you. I gave him this money to take care of you. My responsibility is done. We have a little different society then. But at any rate, it is a safety net for this woman. And the idea that she might have a son to care for her in her older years is, again, a safety net for her. Her other recourse, if she's young enough, would be to go into prostitution. And nobody wanted the widows to have to do that. So, in a weird sort of way, this is an act of compassion, this idea of this Levite marriage. Now, again, the Sadducees take it to the point of absurdity, so that you go 7 times. But it works, even to 7. She's still being cared for. Someone is taking care of her. And as I talk to the children, who am I to say that it isn't God that had implemented that idea to care for these women, to shelter them, to take care of them, to provide for them? God will take care of us if we have faith. We don't necessarily like sometimes the way things go. We may not like having to be put into a nursing home where someone else is taking care of us. We may not like that at all. But if it's truly God's way of taking care of us, then we need to be able to be accepting of that and to make the best of it as we can. I understand that's easier said than done, and I'll probably rail against my kids the day they try to put me in a nursing home, but we'll deal with it. I'll preach that sermon then, right? At any rate, this is an idea that this woman needs someone here in this world to care for her. And God has provided that through this tradition of this Levite marriage. The point that Jesus is making here is that once she's passed over, once she's in the resurrected body, she doesn't need a man to care for her anymore. None of us needs anyone to care for us anymore, because we are then in the direct care of God. Whereas here we are in the secondary care of God, as I talk to the children, by God using other people as his hands and feet. Once we are in heaven and on the new, and then beyond that in the resurrection, the new earth, we are in the direct care of God. We don't have a need for someone else to care for us. And that, I think, is really the point here. And we can get caught up in this whole marital status, and I think that just is an unnecessary engagement. It's an attempt for us to understand it. We just have to remember that we have faith in God, even here, that the people he's sending to help us are his servants, his hands and feet. We can accept even things we don't really necessarily like. Because why don't we like them? Because sometimes it's embarrassing, right? None of us likes to be embarrassed. And so we have to just remember that some things about this body, this physical body, are pretty embarrassing. And so let's remember that. But let's praise God. Praise the message of the widow and the 7 brothers, that each one stepped up to do the bidding of God. And each one cared for that woman until she passed. And then she was God's. And God took care of her. Praise God. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so very much for the care that you give us on each and every day, even though we don't recognize it adequately, even though we can't begin to see it and notice it and to raise up enough praise. Lord, thank you for that. We thank you for our loved ones that you've sent into this world to care for us. We thank you for the strangers that you send to care for us time to time, dear Lord. And Lord, we just lift it all up to you, and we ask that you allow us to do your bidding, and where you need us to be your hands and feet, you send us, and we go without hesitation, as we always say. Pray this in your loving glory.